Changing topic to the visa waiver, which is this department and the Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken, completely convinced that Israel has totally fulfilled all its obligations to join the visa program?
We are convinced that it has met the requirements to join the visa waiver program. It's a recommendation the Secretary made to the Department of Homeland Security, and it was ultimately decided by the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Over the past few months, as we've been trialing this program with the government of Israel, we've seen more than 100,000 American citizens enter Israel without a visa. That includes tens of thousands of Americans on the Palestinian registry who have traveled into Israel without a visa. And that said, we have ongoing monitoring programs that will be in place for Israel, as they are with every other member of the visa waiver program. We'll be closely monitoring their compliance as we go forward.
Okay, so you are convinced that Israel is exactly like all the other countries, the 40 other countries that belong to this program. They conduct themselves with the same kind of fidelity in treating all Americans the same.
I said that they have met the requirements of the visa waiver program. As we have discussed many times from this podium, there are differences, especially with respect to Gaza. We have to remember that Gaza is controlled by a foreign terrorist organization. We would expect there to be different procedures. There are different procedures for entering the United States if you're coming from a territory controlled by a foreign terrorist organization. So we do understand that there are different procedures, but we have looked at the plans and the policies that Israel has put into place and decided that they meet the visa waiver program, but we will continue to monitor their compliance going forward.
So you are not concerned that Israel could use this pretext or this caveat that it has special security needs and so on to abuse this, these requirements that you demand of them?
I don't know what you mean with respect to taking advantage of it, but we will be watching for compliance with the program very carefully.
So what recourse do Americans that not treated equally upon entry or departure, what recourse do they have?
They should report that to the United States Embassy.
And in the event that there are repeated incidents, will there be like a pullback?
I don't want to get into any hypotheticals, other than to say, as I just said, that we monitor ongoing compliance with the program and have the ability to take steps up to and including excluding people from the program, countries from the program going forward if they fail to stay in compliance.
Last question on this. A group of American rights groups, Arab American rights groups, have filed a suit against this step. Do you have any comment on that?
I don't. I would refer you to the Department of Justice for comment on that.
Can I ask you about this stat you just gave? You said since when more than 100,000 Americans have entered Israel without a visa?
Since we started this trial period, which was July.
That's like all Americans, right? That includes like people like me and you.
I said over 100,000.
Palestinian Americans?
No, hold on. Over 100,000 American. Let me
Matt, that means nothing. Americans could get into Israel Palestinian Americans.
I think you missed this. I think you missed the second part of what I said. Over 100,000 Americans since we began trialing this program have entered Israel without a visa, and that includes tens of thousands of Americans on the Palestinian registry.
All right, but saying more than 100,000 since the trial period began means absolutely nothing. Okay, it means nothing because you and I could go to Israel without a visa, for years. That's not the issue. So when you say tens of thousands of Palestinian Americans or tens of thousands of Americans who are on the Palestinian registry, how many?
I don't have the exact number. Tens of thousands.
Well, but how do you know that they're? How do you know it's reciprocal? How do you know that this is reciprocity if you can't give an exact number?
I'm giving you tens of thousands. I oftentimes walk out here with numbers that are in a range without the exact number. I'll tell you that's down to the decimal point.
Well, tell me how many was it before the trial period?
I don't have that information.
Well, the point.
I think it is
a meaningless statistic.
I think it is important information that certainly given that the criticism.
Improvements to the way Palestinian Americans are treated when they go to or through Israel. No one is saying that there haven't been. But the question is the reciprocity issue. So let me ask you something. Will Israeli citizens need to get permission from the U.S. government to leave the United States?
To leave the United States? I would refer you to the Department of Homeland Security for that level of specificity.
Is it correct that Palestinian Americans who are on the Palestinian registration list, who are in Gaza, need to get permission, specific permission, not just checking a box on an ESTA form or whatever, to leave.
They do have to go through a different
How is that reciprocal?
I said they have to go through a different circumstance because of the unique nature of the fact that they live in a place that's controlled by a foreign terrorist organization, which is something that we fully understand. So it is different, but we expect, we expect them to be.
I'm not suggesting that Israel, and I'm not trying to say that Israel, that they shouldn't be in the program for whatever reason, except for the fact that is not reciprocity right there. That is discriminatory, whether it is based on sound national security strategy or not. It isn't reciprocity. It doesn't meet the requirements of the law, and that's what this lawsuit that Saeed was just talking about is about. So, how you're just saying that okay, it's all right that some Palestinian Americans are going to be discriminated against?
That is not at all what I said. I said
that is what it is.
I've said that Palestinian Americans coming from Gaza have to go through different procedures because they're coming from a place that's controlled by a foreign terrorist organization.
Yeah. But wait a second. But those Palestinian Americans do not have. This is just to leave Gaza, to leave Israel, to get back to the United States, presumably. It is not a U.S. requirement that they have to do this. It is an Israeli requirement, and that means that it is that the treatment is not reciprocal.
We believe that under the procedures that the government of Israel is putting into place, they will be able to travel. Americans on the Palestinian registry in Gaza, or any American citizens in Gaza, will be able to travel into Israel without a visa. There are different procedures, but ultimately they may have to go. But ultimately, it's.
So reciprocity is only getting in; it doesn't include getting out. Because you don't know.
No, I'm not.
And because it doesn't make any sense.
I would disagree with that. That we believe that we have set up a program that allows them. First of all, again, is delivering an enormous benefit to American citizens, including Palestinian Americans who have not been able to fly into Ben Gurion before now, who have not been able to transit in and out of the West Bank. There are different procedures for Gaza. We understand that. We expect it. We think it's appropriate for there to be so. But at the end of the day, those American citizens who are in Gaza have the ability to transit with different procedures, but without a visa.
I'm not arguing, and I don't think anyone else is arguing, that this isn't a good thing for U.S.-Israeli relations, or that Israeli citizens should have them. The question is whether they meet the legal criteria. And honestly, what you have just said now does not meet the criteria for reciprocity.
We have made it.
It doesn't.
So I'm not a lawyer, but we have looked at it inside the State Department and come to a different determination. Well, then we're really in the we have come to a different determination.
So would you agree that there is a two-tier system of? There's a two-tier. There's a different system for Palestinian.
I don't know how many times I have to say this, which is that there are different requirements for people that live in Gaza, and I think for understandable reasons.
Reciprocity.
An Israeli citizen wants to leave the United States and go back to Israel, and they're
an Israeli citizen.
Yeah, under the visa waiver program, right? So they can get in without a visa, but they're doing so. Like if they're in Arizona, politically you think is a suspect.
So I'm not going
to apply for an exit visa to get out of the U.S.
Again, now you are getting beyond my knowledge of immigration law. When we start talking about when we start talking about Israeli citizens here.
I've read the 15-page DHS talking points that they're reading out here, and they don't address this question. And not only do they not address the question of the Gaza issue and reciprocity, Israel is not even meeting right now the criteria for the West Bank, for Palestinians who are going, Palestinian Americans who are on the registry who are going into the West Bank. Now, yes, it has improved, no doubt. No one's saying it hasn't, but they're not meeting that requirement either. So it's not an issue of whether Israel should get into the program based on it being a partner of the U.S. and a strategic ally in the Middle East. It's a question of whether they meet the legal criteria under the law. And they don't. And what your answers have just said is that they don't meet the criteria, and you're letting them in anyway.
That is not at all what I've said. I have said we make the determination that they do, and ultimately we have the ability to monitor this going forward.